We haven't really talked about sex education in Pakistan, talking about contraception. Family planning is hardly ever mentioned on the political agenda.
We work with communities, we co-create with them. But I'm not going to say that there are no misgivings on ground. There is a mistrust to family planning. And that is why we introduce social behavior change with our models.
This is important because a woman usually does not have the right to decide how many children she wants, and this is decided often by the husband or invariably by the mother-in-law.
One of the huge shifts that even within Pathfinder that we brought on is that our engagement with men and male companions and even mother-in-laws.
We know that in Pakistan, the government is struggling with the economy. The economy, we keep hearing, is sinking. But there's one aspect of Pakistan where we keep growing, and that is population. Pakistan has one of the fastest growing population in South Asia, besides Afghanistan. The population growth rate is believed to be somewhere around 2.5%. We know that an ever exploding population with a sinking economy paints a doomsday scenario. We haven't really talked about sex education in Pakistan. We avoid talking about contraception. Family planning is hardly ever mentioned on the political agenda. And yet, there is some change taking place on the ground. Joined today on the show, I am by Madiha Latif. She's a country director of Pathfinder International. They work in the area of contraception, family planning, gender equity, maternal health, all fun stuff. Madiha, welcome to DawnNews. I want to ask you, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that there are a number of projects, interventions that you have been involved with over the last few months and your organization has been involved with over the years. Is there any hope? Is our attitudes changing? Are you able to share any success stories?
Hi, Shahzeb. So first off, thanks for having me. And it's really refreshing to have a conversation on all the good that is being done. Because, we keep talking about the fact that population growth is a problem, but it's not necessarily always as simple as that. One of the key programs that we work on right now is a very big investment by USAID, which is called the Building Healthy Families activity. This is being currently implemented in Sindh and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and we are also going to be scaling some interventions up in Punjab as well very soon. And one of the key things that we see with the work that we're doing, we're investing in community midwifery schools to expand human resource for health. We're working with lady health workers to provide them with the tools and the knowledge that they need in order to ensure that the communities are getting access to quality, comprehensive information that allows them to make better choices for their health.
So are you providing training and contraception? How exactly are you sort of helping people on the ground?
So we do multi-level interventions, but I do want to clarify that we're not a service delivery intervention. What we've been doing under the Building Healthy Families activity, particularly, is we've brought together partners for this program that take a private sector lens, that take a health systems lens, that also take a community engagement and mobilization lens.
We are a country where conspiracy theories thrive. There's a lot of misgivings. Now, if you are, let's say, an international NGO and you are working on the ground and they hear that you are funded by USAID, it's American money. And there are all these views in the sort of the religious circles that this is a Western project to curtail our population and so on and so forth. Have you come across this kind of resistance? And if yes, how do you deal with it?
Maybe I'm one of those lucky ones, but we've never really had that kind of resistance so far in our work. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist or that doesn't happen. That's not actually what I'm trying to insinuate. But what I am saying is that I believe because our model is grounded in community and community-led ownership, we work with communities, we co-create with them so that we're doing what they want us to do, as well as ensuring that our work is aligned with the government and their priorities. But I'm not going to say that there are no misgivings on ground. There is a mistrust to family planning to the conversation on family planning. And that is why we introduce social behavior change with our models that are designed with the people that we want to serve.
No, that
So
sounds like a huge undertaking to change attitudes and behaviors, and that takes a long, long time, right?
yes.
Have you noticed any behavioral change?
So with social behavior change, measurement of success is something that we struggle with worldwide. Our work in Badin and Thatta under a Takeda pharmaceutical company. Sorry, there's 6 districts, but I'm only mentioning a couple right now. But we're present in 5 districts in Sindh, and we're doing something called gender transformative dialogues. And what those dialogues essentially are creating spaces between women and their male companions, whether they're their husbands, brothers, or fathers, any kind of male influencers in their lives. We bring those two together and we create space and facilitate a dialogue between the two. And the dialogue is one that is grounded in what their day-to-day realities are and how the behaviors of their male companions impede upon their rights or their safety or their security, which then culminate into what we know as violence against women and girls.
So this is important because we know that in large parts of Pakistan, in rural areas, in urban low-income areas, the woman usually does not have the right to decide how many children she wants, how often she wants, and this is decided often by the husband or invariably by the mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So you are engaging other members of the family in this conversation.
Yes. So, one of the huge shifts that even within Pathfinder that we brought on is that our engagement with men and male companions and even mother-in-laws has been deepened. We don't do it just as a token or just as a checkbox, but rather build conscientious models that create continued dialogue between two people. The problem is that our previous experiences has taught us much. And a lot of it is what we shouldn't be doing. And one of the things we shouldn't be doing is giving people lectures. Recently, we found out that one of the women and her male allies that we worked with during this dialogue, it was a 7-day dialogue almost, that these two, the two unit, I'd like to say, actually convinced 10 families not to marry their daughters young. They told them, why it was a bad idea, what could be the damage to the girl's head, what could be the damage to the community health, and what other implications it could have, and convince them to wait. It wasn't that aap shaadi nahi karaye or don't get your daughters married, but rather wait until it's the right time so she's able to be safer, healthier, and prosper more.
So you work with the government, and obviously you help with trainings, maybe capacity building. What is your sense? Why is family planning not a priority for successive political governments in Pakistan?
So I wouldn't say it's not a priority at all, because there's been a lot of investment in terms of attention, in terms of conversation, in terms of dialogue, and even interventions. For instance, Sindh passed the Reproductive Healthcare Act in 2019, which actually stipulates the right of family planning for women and the right to health services. And similarly, other provinces have also taken conscientious legislative stances against this, building policies, reforms, programs. The problem is the investment. Shahzeb, at the end of the day, you can create all the demand you want, but if you're not going to be able to supply to the needs of the people, they're never going to be met. And you've already mentioned it. Our population is growing, and it's growing at a really fast rate. Our investments are not growing at that rate. Our human resource is not growing at that rate.
Why isn't the government putting its money in family planning, in contraception? They've got money for other stuff, building infrastructure, expensive, big, huge projects. Have you had a chance looking at recent budget, provincial budget, federal budget, and how much money has been allocated to family planning?
You get a health stream, and within the health stream, there's a family planning, which goes to the population welfare department. The population welfare department is where the procurement of contraception and family planning happens. And we do have a bit of a complex system. It's not, just straightforward. And, initially there was that coordination that had been a bit of an issue. But we've seen that improvement within the departments. In Sindh, for instance, having one minister in ways created that integration that was required in order for coordination to flow. We still are struggling in some provinces for that.
We're talking about, in terms of contraception, we're talking about producing condoms locally, pills locally. Is that what you're talking about?
A more long-acting methods. We're not producing any of those locally. I believe we used to produce a short-term method locally. But it's not at the new generation that it needs to be. And generally, that's been one of the key areas that I feel is still lagging behind, is our investments in research and development.
The government only needs to make it a focus, and there will be lots of local businesses manufacturing it. If there is also demand, if this is a focus, we're not talking about inventing something. I mean, contraceptions have been around globally for a long time. I mean, I'm sure next door India and other places, they are producing locally, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are. And a lot of our imports at different variable times have been from India. We've been importing contraception from India. When we say R&D, it's sort of like, using the methods that are using the materials that are available locally in order to produce the kind of level of quality, regulatory compliant family planning method within the local systems as well. So, it's a long level of investment in terms of even just capacity development, personnel development, who is producing these, how are they producing them.
Is it fair to say that much of the work taking place in Pakistan's family planning sector is being helped by foreign donors?
Yeah, I will say that. Yes, absolutely. A lot of the work that is being done on family planning and health system strengthening has been supplemented by the work that NGOs like Pathfinder, organizations and social franchises like Green Star Social Marketing, they're the ones that are leading some of the key interventions and shifts that are required. And yes, we are supported by aid and investment that comes from
and I'm sure some of the work that you've been talking about is making a difference, but we agree that it's on a micro level. And for this to become sort of a national game changer, the government has to take that responsibility, right?
Yes, they need to increase their health investments. And across the board, they need to invest across the board, whether we're talking about human resource, whether we're talking about procurement, whether we're talking about capacity development and training. Women's health is always deprioritized, whether we talk about it at a government level or whether we talk about it at a community or even individual level.
So, I mean, you look at Bangladesh, for example, you look at other countries in the region, performing much, much better than Pakistan when it comes to contraception, family planning. They also have challenges with literacy and education and so on. And yet you see them prioritizing, gender equity, women empowerment, and that automatically translates into spacing in how many children families produce. Our social attitudes have also contributed to it. It's not just the so-called religious opposition, but this is social and cultural as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Many years ago, I did a very, very anecdotal study on how much religion influences family planning practices and behaviors. And what we found was that while there is some influence, the influence is not what the real deterrence is. There's social-cultural pressures rather on men and women and new couples to prove fertility. There is also the idea that bigger families means more ability to work on land. In a lot of ways, and it's unfortunate to say, but a lot of our tribal disputes and a lot of our disputes in rural areas are resolved by picking up children, harming children, or using children as weapons. it's almost as a security blanket, have more family members in order to, maybe even access resources or fight back or challenge, whatever situation whatever situations these may be in.
When you talk about the cultural, social aspect, Pakistan does not have a homogeneous culture. So have you observed different trends in different regions? If you compare, for example, Northwestern province, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa with Sindh or Balochistan with Punjab, or do you see different cultural norms playing out?
There are different manifestations of them, definitely, but the outcomes at the end of the day remain the same. So, for instance, in Sindh, there was a time where acid crime was really high, but that has never really been a problem in other provinces, the way it was in Sindh. Again, not saying that it doesn't happen everywhere, but in terms of comparative. Early age marriage is really rampant in certain areas of Sindh versus certain other areas of Sindh as well, depending on the kind of beliefs that may have, the kind of environmental constraints people may have. In certain areas, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, transactional marriages are very high versus certain areas in Sindh. Or even in Balochistan, tribal practices take precedence over everything else. So they'll always go through that route as compared to other provinces. So yes, there are different ways that these manifest and different ways these cultural, social practices exist. But the outcomes at the end of the day always put the women and girls at the most vulnerable in these spaces.
Okay. All right. I mean, it's a huge challenge, but thank you for taking the time to explain and share the work that Pathfinder International is doing in Pakistan. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much once again, and hope to speak to you soon again.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderful conversation today.